Wisconsin Eye's 2014 election coverage is brought to you by the Wisconsin Hospital Association. For over 90 years, a valued voice for Wisconsin hospitals, supporting high-quality, high-value care in communities like yours.
Wisconsin Eye is in Eau Claire. We're at the Chippewa Valley Tech College campus. We're interviewing State Representative Kathy Bernier of Chippewa Falls. She's a Republican seeking re-election in Assembly District 68. Kathy, welcome back to Wisconsin Eye.
Thank you very much. My pleasure to be here.
Programming note, Wisconsin Eye appreciates the support of the Wisconsin Hospital Association, which represents more than 139 hospitals and health systems, for making these candidate interviews possible. Kathy, on your campaign website, you say that one of the achievements of your party in the last few years was balancing the budget. I want to ask you, do you consider it still balanced in light of the Fiscal Bureau report saying there's a potential budget deficit of $1 billion in the next biennium, which you'd be voting on the next budget?
That proposes a challenge. Yes, it does.
Okay.
But I think Bob Lang had prefaced that with, it is an estimate. We have to go along with those estimates depending on what the revenues that we have coming in. We will look at it again this fall and yet again in January. We're accustomed to financial challenges. We've managed to deal with the previous $3.6 billion deficit, and I think we can also deal with this challenge as well, should it occur as the estimates indicate.
And you've heard the criticism from Mary Burke and other Democrats that this potential budget deficit means Republicans like you shouldn't have voted on 3 tax cuts in the last 20 months. Do you want to respond?
Well, I was looking at some of the categories in which the revenues are low. One is cigarettes, and the other one's beer, of which we all are proponents of the reduction of those purchases. So, you know, you have to look at all of the data in order to make assumptions. But in the world of politics, Steve, as you know, you are subject to criticism no matter what the numbers say or what the idea is. But I think along with the tax code that we'll be working on and a number of other issues that we can still take a look at streamlining the tax code and bringing tax relief, and I don't think it was a mistake.
Just a quick follow-up on that. What do you think would be the biggest change you'd like to see in streamlining a tax code? Excuse me.
Well, I think everything should be on the table, of course, and I think that we need a fairer and flatter tax code. I have Dale Kuyanga has been heading that up, the CPA in our caucus. I have conversations with him every now and then about some ideas that we can have to make it fairer and flatter for everyone, and not so complicated. And we give tax breaks, then we for one area, property tax, then we give another tax break on the income tax, offsetting you know, some of those tax reductions at the property tax level. So it's very convoluted, and it's year after year after year that many legislatures have seen fit to give a tax break or a write-off. And I think that all is compiled over many years, and I think we need to break that down.
If you're reelected, one of the biggest items in the next state budget, obviously, is aid to schools. What would be your priorities when the Assembly is debating the next budget in terms of aid to schools?
Well, I think we did give $300 million worth of aid in the last budget for schools, and education is so very important. I think I am an example of that. I went to college when I was 37. I graduated when I was 42. I assure you probably I would not be in this position had I not gone to college. So education from K-12 all the way up to higher education is a priority. And I suspect that we will be looking at additional revenues to the schools. And probably lead into your next question is that formula, the funding formula for education. We need to take a closer look at that. It definitely advantages schools with a high property tax level, where their equalized values are much higher.
Yeah,
they can, in the tax base, they can put more property tax into their education. Where I have a lot of rural schools in my district, and I see their pain and their decreasing enrollments, and so we need to really take a hard look at that and how we can level that playing field for all schools.
A big part of that debate in the next budget will be the future of choice and voucher schools. Mm-hmm. Your position on whether, well, the Speaker wants to take the 1,000 enrollment cap off. Do you support that?
You know, this is kind of a personal issue with me, and I'm pretty passionate about it. To me, it's giving children and parents choices for education is so important so that our children are not left behind. So if you're a child who happens to be ADHD or some other issue that child may have, their choices, the parents' choices were limited, and I speak from personal experience there, and where it is up to a principal or somebody in the school system to say, well, you know, we don't want your child to go to that school. We want your child to stay right here. And I think that parents should have some choices. And there was an article in the Eau Claire Leader talking about a child who was in a public school who nearby who was having problems. Now, I don't know, that child went to a different school, a parochial school, and it happens to be a school choice school. Now, I don't know if his parents paid the tuition or if they took advantage of the voucher. Mm-hmm. But that child did so much better, and he was a child of color. And so I don't believe we should slam the door in anyone's face with educational opportunities, because to me, no child left behind means that if you don't have a child that is not a sit-in-the-row kind of child, and that they want to have different options for the education of that child so that they will become a productive adult, then options should be available. And if that is a piece of paper that allows the funding for that child to follow the child, I'm in favor of that.
Governor Walker's call for Wisconsin to withdraw from the Common Core standards, your reaction?
I think the reasoning behind Common Core is admirable. I think that we need to be interstate, intrastate, and internationally competitive. I think that the purpose behind that, where the governors that met, was somewhat honorable. But when you have a standard that has caused so much controversy and so much disagreement, not only with parents, but with also other educators, it is incumbent upon us to evaluate what those standards are and why they're there. And I think we need a Wisconsin core. I think that we need a little more participation, because I think that decision that was made in a vacuum, with only certain individuals at the table to make those decisions. And I think that the legislature and our Constitution set up a public education system. Being public is the key word. There was not enough participation in the decision that was made, and I have my concern is once there's federal dollars that are dangled in front of the face of any bureaucrat, they're going to grab it and go. And I think that there needs to be more participation and more openness in the process.
Transportation funding, there's a projection that the next state budget could be $600, $700 million short in transportation funding. How should that be filled?
In my opinion, I think it should be filled by several different mechanisms, whether it be registration. I personally advocate for a graduated system similar to Minnesota with registration. So the more expensive your car, the more you pay? Precisely.
Thank you.
I come from a rural community. I've had low-income periods in my life, and I believe that the registration, if you have a $5,000 vehicle versus a $50,000 vehicle, the registration should reflect that. We're probably going to look at an additional gas tax. I'll be perfectly honest. Our revenues are far lower than what we need to keep our infrastructure up. And so that, I think, is the reason why Secretary Gottlieb went around to talk about that very issue. Mm-hmm. And so I think everyone recognizes that, and our transportation funds are going to be in a lockbox, that they are only going to be used for transportation. With that said, I need to make sure that the Secretary and the Governor and the Legislature understands that infrastructure is not just state infrastructure that's necessary. That last mile between the interstate or the state highway into the business with the goods and services falls on the back of local government. That falls on county government. And so they too are feeling the pinch with being able to keep the infrastructure steadily improved or repaired or replaced. So local government is got to be a part of that equation and consideration as well.
Frac sand mining, as you know, has just exploded in western Wisconsin. The debate in the Capitol that you and I have heard seems to be that state government should set minimal standards and local governments couldn't go beyond it. But is it purely a local control issue?
I don't think it's purely a local control issue. I tell you what the local control issue primarily is with the land use portion. So we can't have a patchwork of air and water quality standards from one town to the next or one county to the next. I think that has to be consistent. I think it's appropriate that the EPA and the DNR handle the air and water quality standards, and I don't advocate for local government to be able to create separate and different standards. So with that said, the land use, I believe, should stay within the local control. The challenge has been that we have some towns that have followed kind of different standards with different situations. Mm-hmm. And so the Wisconsin Towns Association is working closely with the towns to help them. Because, I mean, let's face it, they are definitely citizen legislators at the town level. And some have the expertise necessary and some do not. And so they need to be consistent, and what they need to do is to have their zoning or their processes in place for the permitting. And they can't change it at the 11th hour depending on who has more clout or who has more money or whatever the situation is. So consistency is important with that, but I believe that it should remain at the local level.
One healthcare issue, as you know, 1 in 5 Wisconsin residents gets their health care from our Medicaid system. The American Hospital Association says our Medicaid reimbursement rates are the second lowest in the nation. Should they be increased, the MA reimbursement rates?
Yes, I believe they should be increased, but as you know, things are much more complicated than that. In any business, in our capitalist economy, when the costs exceed the revenues, they're going to pass on those costs to other consumers, and that is what has gone on here. So obviously, if Medicaid can pay more, then the insured or private pay individuals should reap the benefits of paying less. Obamacare has thrown a little different light on this subject, in as much as we don't know yet how Obamacare has affected the individuals who needed to go on to that program, what the reimbursements are going to be, who's all on the program, whether the individuals that were on Badger Care actually went and signed up on Obamacare, and they're being subsidized by the federal government. So I'm open to looking at that. I think DHS should be as well. And we need more data to determine just how it's all going to play out.
The bill to legalize medical marijuana will be reintroduced, and now the states of Colorado and Washington have legalized recreational marijuana. Your position on those issues?
I looked at some of the backlash and the ramifications of Colorado and Washington. They're not really good. And the jury's still out on that. So I think that Wisconsin probably shouldn't add in the mix. In regard, we can glean some information from Washington and Colorado. We did provide some cannabis oils that were beneficial for seizures. We did that in the last session. You know, in my mind, criminalizing something or legalizing something versus criminalizing are two different issues as well. And there are very few people that really are in jail or prison because they possess some marijuana. So I think that we'll take a look at it, but I personally don't believe, you know, we're worried about people's health. We're trying to eliminate tobacco use, and we're trying to keep people from drinking and driving, and legalizing marijuana seems to be hypocritical to me. So I'm not in favor of that, no.
And you just mentioned drinking and driving. Should first offense OWI be a crime?
No.
Should not be?
No.
Okay. Then
we'll
finally,
leave it at that.
Finally, do you want to highlight any differences with your opponent on November 4?
Well, in his literature, he has similar philosophies as mine, but I have not had the opportunity to talk with him or participate in a forum with him to really hone in on what our differences are. So I think I've done an excellent, exceptional job as a representative. Constituent services has been great for my office. We were able to work with agencies to get 2 teachers their licenses so they could teach within under a week's time. One took 4 hours. So I have some happy constituents, and I think that's really what it's all about, is serving my constituents in the 68th Assembly District.
Thank you very much. State Representative Kathy Bernier of Chippewa Falls is a Republican seeking re-election in Assembly District 68. Kathy, thanks for talking to Wisconsin Eye.
Thank you.